David and Goliath, a story of faith and courage. The sun had barely risen over the hills of Israel when a great battle loomed on the horizon. The Israelite and Philistine armies stood on opposite sides of a vast valley, their banners rippling in the wind, their swords gleaming under the morning light. But fear gripped the hearts of the Israelites, for among the Philistines stood a warrior unlike any other. His name was Goliath. Towering over 9 feet tall, clad in heavy bronze armor and wielding a spear as thick as a weaver's beam, Goliath was the mightiest shoulder the Philistines had ever known. Day after day, he stepped forward, his voice booming across the valley, shaking the very ground beneath the Israelites' feet. "Is there no one brave enough to face me?" he taunted. "If any man can defeat me, the Philistines will become your servants. But if I win, you will serve us." For 40 days, this challenge rang out, and for 40 days, the Israelite army cowered. Even King Saul, a man once mighty in battle, could find no warrior bold enough to face the giant. Meanwhile, in a quiet village not far from the battlefield, a young shepherd named David tended to his father's sheep. He was the youngest of 8 brothers, and though small in stature, he had a heart full of courage. One day his father just called to him, "David, take this bread and cheese to your brothers in the army." Jess instructed, "Bring back news of how they fare." David obeyed eagerly. He had always dreamed of battle, of proving himself beyond the hills of Bethlehem. He slung his shepherd bag over his shoulder and set off on the journey, unaware that destiny awaited him. When David arrived at the battlefield, he was met with a troubling sight. The soldiers of Israel murmured among themselves, their faces pale with fear. "He has called for a challenger again. No man can defeat him. Even the king does not know what to do." David's eyes darted towards the valley, where the great Philistine warrior stood. Goliath's laughter echoed across the land as he ridiculed Israel's army. David's blood boiled. "Why does no one challenge him?" he asked his brothers. "How can we let this man defy the army of the living God?" His eldest brother Eliab scoffed and stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. "Why are you here, David? Have you left the sheep alone again? You just want to watch the battle, don't you?" David frowned. "What have I done now? I only asked a question." Another brother, Abinadab, shook his head. "This is not your fight, David. Go home before you get yourself hurt." David turned to them undeterred. "I may be young, but should we allow this Philistine to mock the armies of God? Do you not believe he will deliver us?" Eliab sighed in frustration. "You don't understand, David. This is not a bear or a lion in the fields. This is Goliath. He has never been defeated. No one stands a chance." David's eyes gleamed with determination. "Then let me be the first to try." His words reached the ears of King Saul. He summoned him at once. David stood before the king, his chin high. "I will fight this giant." Saul studied the boy, then shook his head. "You are just a shepherd. How can you face a warrior like Goliath?" David smiled. "When I watch my father's sheep, I have fought off lions and bears with my own hands. The same God who delivered me from those beasts will deliver me from this giant." The conviction in his voice was undeniable. King Saul, seeing the fire in David's eyes, sighed and relented. He offered David his royal armor, but when David tried it on, he could barely move beneath its weight. "I cannot fight in this." David said, shaking his head, "I will use what I know." He left the armor behind and knelt by a stream, selecting 5 smooth stones. With only his sling and his faith in God, David stepped onto the battlefield. Goliath's laughter roared as he saw the young shepherd approach. "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? Come closer, and I will feed your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." David met the giant's gaze without fear. "You come with sword and spear, but I come in the name of the Lord Almighty. Today he will give you into my hands, and all will know that there is a God in Israel." A hush fell over the battlefield as David reached into his pouch and placed a stone in his sling. He swung it swiftly, the leather straps whirring through the air. Then with perfect precision, he let the stone fly. The small rock struck Goliath's forehead with a force greater than any sword. The giant staggered, his eyes wide with shock. Then with a thunderous crash, he fell to the earth. Silence. The Philistines gasped in horror. The Israelites stood frozen in disbelief. The mighty Goliath was dead. A great roar erupted from the Israelite army. The Philistines, seeing their champion fallen, turned to flee. The Israelites surged forward, chasing them from the battlefield. King Saul watched in astonishment as David returned, his sling in hand, his face calm despite the chaos around him. Saul turned to his commander. "Who is this boy?" "He is David, son of Jesse," the commander replied. That day, David became more than a shepherd. His trust in God had won him the battle, and in time he will become one of the greatest kings of Israel. His story will be told for generations, a testament to the power of faith and courage. And so, the young shepherd who had once tended sheep became a warrior, a hero, and a king. For in the hands of God, even the smallest can achieve the greatest of victories. As the Israelites marched home, their joy was uncontainable. The streets of their towns filled with laughter and celebration. Mothers hugged their children tightly, knowing their land was safe. Fathers cheered, lifting their voices in praise. Women danced in the streets, playing tambourines and singing, "Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands." The entire nation rejoiced, for they had seen the hand of God deliver them from their enemy. The victory was not only David's, but all of Israel's, and their hearts swelled with gratitude and renewed faith.